I will. Good morning. Can you hear me well? I think so. A warm welcome to Brussels, to the Microsoft Technology Center, to this day, which I would call like All Digital Day. We have a number of events coming this morning and afternoon and evening until almost late at night. No, until 8. My name is Peter Pálvölgyi. I'm the CEO of All Digital. And very first, I would like to thank Microsoft for hosting our event the entire day. We really appreciate Microsoft support, not only for hosting this event, but also for their continued support of All Digital. Today's event is also online, so it's streamed and recorded. So those who couldn't come today, or if you would like to watch the content later, you can. Today's event and the content is not only supported by Microsoft, but also co-funded by the European Commission. We have two main events today, let's say conferences. One is the first one this morning, local and regional approaches to digital inclusion. This conference is organized together, co-organized with Mediawijs, All Digital's member organization. We decided that this is a very important topic, which we both and through our members kind of all working together. We are going to explore how local and regional governments can work effectively with local partners and stakeholders on digital inclusion strategies and programs. Just trying to move on with the slides. Yeah, so this morning, at the beginning, we are going to hear 3 keynote presentations, and a bit later, I'm going to present the speakers. Then we are welcoming Sarah Andres and Paula Verhart from University of Ghent and the Free University of Brussels for the presentation on localizing digital inclusion policy. It's a comparative analysis they have conducted on local policy responses to digital exclusion in Belgium, France, and Norway. Then Alenka de Comte, digital inclusion expert from Mediawijs, will speak about how Mediawijs is supporting local governments on digital inclusion in Flanders. And after that, we are going to have a panel discussion on the topic. The first keynote speaker will be Alteo Valentini, General Manager of All Digital Members Organization, Egina, from Italy, and he is the Chair of the Board and President of All Digital. Then I invite Alenka de Comte, Digital Inclusion Expert from Mediawijs, and our third keynote speaker will be Gerardo Franco, Europe Philanthropies Lead from Microsoft. And after the university research speakers, we have invited our panelists to discuss the topic. So thank you very much. And I think my time is to give the floor to President Alteo Valentini. Alteo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Peter. Let me first join you in thanking Microsoft for hosting us today. We are actually, our main campaign started yesterday, but today is the official launch. So we're really glad we can share this with you here in this beautiful venue. And thanks for the proposal to Mediawijs to share the organization of this important conference on a topic that is key for what we do at All Digital, especially because even if our main mission is to represent our members in Brussels, that's why we are here. Actually, we couldn't do this without having inputs from the local and regional level. So I really appreciate the choice of focusing on this, especially at the beginning of our main campaign. But let me first tell you something about All Digital. We are leading pan-European organization, formerly named Telecenter Europe. Some years ago, we decided it was the time to change the focus of our activities. And this year, we managed to reach a number of over 100 members represented all over Europe that every day works with 25,000 digital competence centers for the benefit of 2.3 million people all around Europe and beyond. As you can see, we are widespread. We are still missing some countries, actually. So this is one of our main strategic goal, to be really representative at all Europe. We're working on that. But what we do is we try to support our members in equipping all people, actually all those who are living in Europe, not only European citizens, with digital skills, especially being confident and being capable to exploit the opportunities of digital transformation. We do this also trying to connect the digital domain with other key domains of our era today. So trying to build together a greener, a more inclusive, and a more cohesive Europe. We are a community. So actually our members, and I'm really glad to see many of them here, in our annual survey always answer that the main reason why it's nice to join our network is because they feel the family environment. So this is the last summit, a picture from the last summit in Zagreb. And I'm really glad to be the chair of the board in this period when our community is growing all around Europe, bringing actually competencies and experiences from many different types of stakeholders, all of them somehow impacting on the local and regional governance of digital skills development. So this is what I actually find as the richness of our network, not being vertical in terms of domain, but trying to promote cooperation between public authorities, educational centers, universities, and everything that relates to digital skills and competences. Here are some numbers. I already actually mentioned some of them. Just want to focus on the fact that our main aim and strategy actually to vehiculate the needs of our members is to communicate them through social networks. So you can see here our channels and events. So all digital weeks, the summits, but also what we are trying to do is to create concrete opportunities for cooperation. We do this especially with community of practices. At the moment, we are representing on behalf of JRC a very lively community of practices on DigComp that has the main aim of monitoring the implementation of the framework and trying to bring innovation for its continuous development. And lately, we also started a new community of practice on something that is very relevant for us, digital competencies certification, with a European approach, a European view on this critical element of the digital skills development. Of course, we join European Commission working groups at different levels, the ones on digital skills, but as historically we are focus on adult learning, we pay attention to this domain, which is, I stress this out, is one of the less represented still in the European policy dimension. And of course, we do not forget the most emerging topics like micro-credentials and artificial intelligence. Something that is very strategic for us, and we have implemented it during the last 2 years, is also the establishment of mutual partnership. We believe that impacting on the digital transformation needs to cooperate on a wider level. That's why we started to make agreements with other networks representing different sectors. Here in the room, there is for sure FVET, but we also cooperate with AVBB for the vocational education and training sector. And we are trying to build a wider network of interest from all those sectors that are somehow impacted by the digital transformation. Our flagship initiatives, I'm going to present them briefly because otherwise I'm almost sure that my time is almost finished, but I cannot skip this. How do we sustain this? With the support of our members, with the support of the operating grants of the European Commission and the projects funded both by public bodies and our private donors. As you can see, we have a number of projects on many different topics. Of course, the digital domain is the most important one, but we try to use projects as a cooperation opportunity to bring innovation to the sector and to also produce something that can be used at local level by our members as a follow-up opportunity with their different target groups. All our activities then flow into our project and into our events. Here, I'm not spending many words because this afternoon you will have an overall overview, but I have to mention the All Digital Weeks. I also want to invite you already to save the date for our next summit that will be organized in Madrid with the cooperation of our member Fundación Splai. And thanks to their dedication to the topic of today conference, this morning conference, we agreed to try out something new. So our summit this year will be a joint event with a specific focus on digital citizenship. So we will jointly organize the Digital Rights Forum with parallel sessions and a lot of activities. You are all invited to come. All Digital Awards, this is our main recognition of those who practice the digital education at local level. As you can see, there are different awards: Best Digital Educator, Best Digital Resource, and Best Digital Change Maker. I have to say that this is the part of the summit that I prefer, because when you have the facilitators, the educators that steps in to tell what they do in very remote areas of Europe to promote digital skills, I really see the value and the main reason why we have All Digital and why we do these activities at EU level. Finally, of course, besides the events, we also provide services to our members. One is the All Digital Academy platform, where we are building now the platform, and I have to say that thanks to the course we are promoting together with Microsoft, generative artificial intelligence in education, we are finally reaching a consistent number of users that are accessing our courses on the last on the emerging digital technologies topics. Something that is also very useful for the work of digital of local and regional authorities is our tool MyDigiSkills, something that you can try out. It's online, available, and it's a self-evaluation tool to assess the level of digital skills based on built on the DICOM framework. I want to conclude with what I think is the most relevant elements for today's morning conference, our manifesto. We, as I said, we focus on all people who need to develop their digital skills in Europe. And we think that training centers, universities, all those that deliver digital skills should be facilitated by local and regional educational authorities in producing education and training offers that respect several key elements. So in our manifesto, you will find guidelines grouped into 5 main domains that it will take me too long to go into, but that definitely reflect what is needed today, on our opinion. The most relevant one to me is the last one: sustainability, recovery, and development. All local and regional public authorities all around Europe should plan policies, interventions, and investments that take care of interoperability principles, thus providing sustainable means in order to then finally promote sustainable recovery and local development actions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
A bit too long, maybe.
Surviving. Whew, rough morning. All right. Welcome to Brussels. Welcome to this event. I also want to thank All Digital and Microsoft for making this event possible. My name is Alenka. I work at Mediawijs, which is a Flemish knowledge center, and we are co-organizing this event today. And as an introduction, I just wanted to share with you why, together with All Digital, we chose this topic and why we think this is so important to talk about. And in order to do that, I wanted to start with telling the story of someone I met 3 weeks ago. She was about to go live on radio for an interview to talk about how she felt digitally excluded in society. And I think her story is really an example of why it's so important to work on this topic. So her name is Evelien. She's 60 years old and she works as a kindergarten teacher. So she's highly educated. She's super motivated about her job. She really loves it. But at the end of this year, she's quitting her job. She's going on early retirement. Why? Because the school or the educational system is forcing her to use some digital tools. She needs to communicate digitally with the parents. She needs to introduce digital tools to the kids. And she feels like she doesn't have the necessary skills to learn these new skills at her age. And so she's quitting her job. I don't know what it's like in your countries, but in Belgium, kindergarten teachers are very hard to find. So we're losing 5 good years of a really motivated, passionate teacher because she feels that she's not able to learn the necessary skills for her job. And that's such a shame. And for me, that's really an example of why it's so important to invest in digital inclusion, to invest in digital skills training. When we look at Belgium, Evelien is definitely not the only one. So we're about 40% of the population who lacks basic digital skills, which puts us about at the average in Europe. So that makes it an excellent case to talk about here in this context. Also, not surprising, the groups most at risk are elderly people, people with a lower level of education, and people with lower financial means. There, the numbers really skyrocket if we look at those specific groups. And I really strongly believe that the place where we need to support these people is at the local level, at the local community center, at the local library, or any place where they feel at home, where they feel comfortable, where they know people, and where they can ask their digital questions and digital support. So I believe it is up to us, digital inclusion experts, digital inclusion organizations, to make sure that those local organizations, those local municipalities, that they get all the information, tools, skills, support they need in order to support people like Evelien. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So I'm really curious to hear about the other European cases, to hear about the research that will be presented. And I really hope you have a really interesting morning or day if you're staying the whole day.
Make sure this is on. Yes, I can hear myself. Hi, everyone. I have my notes. I'm sorry, I can't memorize everything I want to say. How's everyone? Welcome, welcome. So happy to have you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Alteo. Thanks everyone for being here. Such an honor. And I'm very happy to be here. My name is Gerardo Franco. I work at Microsoft Philanthropy specifically. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, but I actually just want to take time right now to kind of like set the stage on challenges and opportunities of local and regional approaches to digital inclusion. Just some food for thought from our perspective. And so let me just start with the institutional spiel, let's call it that. So Microsoft, our mission is to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more, right? And Microsoft Philanthropies is really the social impact arm of Microsoft, and our mission is to empower communities and nonprofits to really leverage the power of AI and digital to achieve positive impact. So why philanthropies? So when your technology changes the world, as it did 40 years ago, and as it's doing it now with AI, Microsoft bears a responsibility to ensure that no one is left behind, right? And that's why we exist, because just yesterday we made an announcement of 4 billion euros being invested in France alone to develop cloud and AI infrastructure. But such announcements don't come it's not just about the infrastructure or the startups that are going to be accelerated, or the data centers that are going to be built. It's also about the millions of people that are going to be skilled and upskilled and reskilled to ensure that everyone can benefit from technology, especially a technology that's revolutionizing everything we do. And so it's more important now than ever to ensure that what's happening at that like supranational level. So we see like Emmanuel Macron and Brad Smith from Microsoft shaking hands yesterday. That's great. That's awesome. It's emblematic. It's the photo op, and it really shows the commitment and the trust. But we need to bring it all the way down to the local level to ensure that everyone is benefiting from that, right? So at Philanthropies, what we do is basically a lot of digital inclusion. So we do a lot of skilling programs across all of Europe. And we want to focus on especially those that are left behind or that have less opportunity, and we call them underrepresented or underserved groups, which can mean many different things depending on the geography, right? Underserved exist just in Switzerland just as they do in Spain. They're just different types of groups. So defining what that target group is also part of bringing, the regional to the local. And I want to talk about some of the challenges we face, because honestly, and that's why I had to write everything down, because it's not easy. And this is just food for thought for you guys. We face two major challenges when bringing our regional and national strategies to local level. One of them is ensuring coherence and cohesiveness, because as you translate from national or regional to local level, things get lost along the way. And so ensuring that we have that coherence. And the second one is ensuring we have efficiency and scalability of our initiatives. Why? Because resources are limited. We can't just spend everywhere all at once. What's that movie's name? Everything, Everywhere, All at Once? We can't do that. So we need to make sure that we're being efficient. But when you are being efficient and you are scaling, you're trying to apply solutions that like it's a one size fits all, and that doesn't work. So we face other sub challenges, which is localizing, which is doing, what do you call them, needs assessments, and all those things. While they do work towards localization of regional approaches, they cost a lot of money as well. So we need to find ways to balance out the cost and the efficiency with the cohesiveness and coherence of the approaches, right? So needs assessment tailoring. Another thing is I talked about limited and uneven resources. I think some of the basic strategies that you will discuss this morning are collaborating and establishing partnerships at every level. And we try to do that with local nonprofits, regional nonprofits, but also grassroots nonprofits, which are basic in understanding the needs of our stakeholders, local authorities. So you work not just at the level of, obviously, of presidents, but we go all the way to local municipalities to ensure that we know what they need and we are responding to their needs, and thereby earning trust and collaborating and creating inclusive content. Localizing content is key. Many of our partners are here today. They know how we struggle sometimes to localize content. It's not just about language, it's about making sure it's relevant. We have content coming from the US that is not relevant for the UK because people don't identify even with the accent. So even in those things that may seem like a no-brainer, it's difficult. So localizing content is always a struggle, and it's always costly. So we try to find ways with technology, like automatic translation, avatars, all sorts of things to bring that to the local level. And flexible funding models are super key here. And like I said, resources are limited, so we need to find ways to partner with governments, with regional institutions, with the EU to ensure that whatever we're funding today is sustainably funded tomorrow. And I guess that's about it. I know it's a lot, but it was just some food for thought. But I did want to thank you again for being here. And if you see me around here, I'll be around here all day. Please reach out. Thank you.
De klikker? Ja. Oké. Wilt je zitten of is het handig? Good morning. Happy to see you all. My name is Paula Verhaert. I'm a researcher at the VUB, and this is my colleague Sarah Andres of the University of Ghent. And we're very pleased to be here today. Thank you to all Digital and to Mediawijs for inviting us. As has been mentioned before, today we'll be presenting research that looks into how policymakers, both at the national level and the local level, have gone about developing and implementing digital inclusion policies that actively engage local governments. So, what's on the agenda for today? We'll start by giving you some background into why we thought this was an important topic to research, and then also sharing with you how we went about conducting the research. Then we'll share some insights from our research. What's interesting to know, maybe for you, is that we're actually combining insights from two separate research reports. First, a cross-country analysis into digital inclusion policies, and then also a deep dive into one specific case, namely Flanders, which is what we'll focus on before sharing some concluding thoughts. So, some background. I'm not sure how many of you are actually, well, I'm guessing most of you are actually engaged with digital inclusion policies on a daily basis. But for those who don't, I'd like to share some background. So, as I'm sure you're all well aware, in recent years, we've seen quite a big surge of policymakers across Europe who've made it a priority to ensure that everyone is able to participate in an increasingly digitalized society. They've set up a number of policy initiatives that try to reach that objective. And generally, we've seen them focusing on providing access to digital infrastructure, to training. We've heard examples about upskilling already, but also to access to social support networks and one-on-one and group support. Also, importantly, in research, we see that scholars really argue against this one-size-fits-all approach. We've also heard from the previous speaker that doesn't quite work, right? People want to feel like they can identify with the person who is providing support to them. So policy responses should really be tailored to the local context and should actively engage with local communities. However, we've also seen as scholars that there isn't quite a lot of research being done into really studying and scrutinizing how digital inclusion policies are designed and then implemented. So how did we go about this study? So there are three research questions that really formed the basis of our research. One, we wanted to know how locally driven policy initiatives to digital inclusion didn't click. So first research question was looking into the how of policy design. So how are these policy initiatives that engage local stakeholders and more specifically local governments, how are they designed? Then we also wanted to know how labor was divided between supralocal and local governments when it came to the implementation of these policies. And then finally, and this is something we'll dive into quite a lot today, is how these digital inclusion policy initiatives were operationalized. What are some common components that we see across the cases that we studied? Some common obstacles when it comes to the operationalization of the policy initiatives and the active involvement of local governments. As I mentioned before, this is a European study. We did a cross-country analysis, and we included cases of Norway, France, and Flanders. So moving on to some key insights from our research. Unfortunately, we don't have time today to really go into the separate cases, except for Flanders later. But we wanted to share with you some things that really stood out to us when it comes to good practices and the structural and sustainable implementation of these policy initiatives. So what are things that we saw that were really key when it comes to engaging with local governments and making sure that not only these policy programs are set up, but they also can continue to exist and are respectful vis-a-vis local stakeholders. So first and foremost, local governments that in the cases that we researched, we saw that very important element was that sufficient flexibility was there for local governments to actively and collaboratively shape the local policies and the projects, and that they were encouraged to participate in national policy programs, not only at a local level, but also with other local and supralocal stakeholders, and very importantly, that they were allowed to maintain their local autonomy. So how did they do this? Basically, in all cases that we researched, we saw that the local projects that were set up really were founded on three principles. So first, a local context analysis that was conducted by local actors who were then able to analyze what is important when it comes to developing a local policy, an analysis of the needs and requirements of the local residents, because they can differ based on location, and then finally also structured partnerships with local organizations, including social organizations, but also maybe youth organizations, libraries, etc. Second element that we saw that was present in successful elements was the meaningful consultation and avenues for knowledge sharing between local and supralocal government actors. We saw in the cases that we researched quite a few interesting and creative examples of consultation structures that allowed digital inclusion actors, people working on digital inclusion, to really talk to each other and engage with each other in a meaningful way, share knowledge across levels, whether it be local, regional, national, rather an international example of such a consultation structure. And in the cases that we researched, we saw that these consultation structures sometimes were coordinated by civil society organizations, such as the case in Flanders, but also in some cases we see that it's actually a government agency that takes on an active role to allow for knowledge exchange. A third element that was key in really allowing for the structural integration of digital inclusion policies at the local level was the anchoring of local projects in supralocal or national policy plans. So really kind of upstream input into policy plans that were being developed at the national level. And an important role is provided here for the national governments, who not only had to say, yes, okay, we will listen to what you're doing, or we see that what you're doing at the local level is interesting, but actually we're going to take in your inputs and actually integrate it and make sure that it's can be scaled up and be integrated into other regions or cities as well. And so they did so by, for example, providing clear mandates for local governments to actually work on digital inclusion, but also by earmarking subsidies for digital inclusion, or also by integrating digital inclusion into policy domains that are also kind of pertinent for local governments, so that they actually have more space to work on this topic, not only within the silo of digital inclusion, but also within other policy domains. Second to last key elements that I want to highlight is, of course, access to structural resources and subsidy. Not surprisingly, but actually we did see a strong correlation between the cases that were able to create structural programs and those that had access to structural resources, especially where local governments had sufficient flexibility to incorporate the subsidies or the resources that they received as was fit for their own context. But of course, another thing that's worth mentioning is that the long-term availability of those resources is not always assured, especially because in a number of the cases that we researched, also beyond the 3 that we looked at, there's quite a lot of insecurity, uncertainty, as in a lot of the countries, including in Belgium, digital inclusion policies really boded well, thanks to the EU's recovery and resilience plans. But of course, that funding will end quite soon. And then finally, a final element that was quite key in the interesting practices that we researched is political support. Political support, it probably is not a surprise to you all, both at the local and the supralocal level, really has a great impact on the existence and the, how should I say, the continued existence of digital inclusion projects and policy programs at the local level. And we see that also changes in government, whether it's at the local level, there's a new mayor, or at the national level, can really both positively or negatively impact the existence of new or existent projects. And actually, that's kind of the overview of the key elements that I wanted to share. So you've now seen kind of a few things that we noticed in researching several countries across Europe, some things that we thought were really quite important to share with you all today. But because this is still quite abstract, we want to also move on and share with you a bit more in depth what the situation is like in Flanders and how digital inclusion programs in Flanders may or may not respond to the key elements that we've shared. Sarah.
Good morning. So now I'm going to dive a bit deeper in the case of Flanders. So Flanders is the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium. And I think 2 years ago, the Flemish government, so on the supra-local level, decided that they wanted to increase the digital inclusion of citizens by ensuring that they have access, skills, but also possibilities to use digital services and the public digital services. And as such, that citizens can also participate in our society in a broader sense, and that there is like support for digital inclusion initiatives. And so the Flemish government decided to invest in several action plans, so several policy plans. And I'm going to focus on one specific plan that gave financial support for local governments and also for some civic society organizations, so who are like between the supra-local, so the Flemish and the local level. Important to know is that in Flanders, so that is like the half of Belgium, we have 300, well, we used to have 300, now I think we have 285 local governments. So in this room, I see some familiar faces who are living in Flanders. If you will ask us, where do you live? Where do you come from? You will probably get a lot of different answers. So we have like a very lot local governments. So the idea of like subsidizing them to increase digital inclusion on the local level is of course very interesting. However, an important factor that is between there is that these local governments can effectively realize then digital inclusion actions, both in practice and in policy. And I will focus a bit more on how did we try to get insights in whether or not local governments are succeeding in this mission to have like a digital inclusion policy. So we asked ourselves 3 questions. If we start from the financial support, from the subsidies, what roles and frameworks do local governments then use to implement a digital inclusion policy? Or in other words, how do they organize themselves? A second question is then, what support do they receive from the supra-local civil society organizations, or the organizations that are in between the Flemish and local level? And then a third question that we asked ourselves is, what challenges do these local governments experience? And what support do they expect from supra-local governments? So the idea of subsidies, it of course gives a lot of responsibility to the local governments. So therefore, we also wanted to ask them, okay, but what challenges do you still encounter, and how do you see the support from the Flemish government? So how did we now answer these questions? We did a multi-method study. So we did a survey study and an interview study. With the survey study, we reached 60% of all the local governments, which is quite a good response rate if you think in population rates for surveys. And so we gained 276 responses spread over 179 local governments. And then additionally, we did interviews with like 9 local governments who varied in size, also in the geographic locations and experience in the topic of digital inclusion. So some were already longer working on this topic than others. And we interviewed 4 different profiles to get like a complete picture of the organization, but also the challenges of the local governments. So now I'm going to zoom into some specific results. We also wrote a report on it with more information, but now I'm going to focus on the 3 main questions that I showed on the previous slides. So with regard to organization, we asked ourselves, okay, how many hours can people that are responsible in the local government for digital inclusion actually work on this topic? And in addition, which departments are responsible for this topic of digital inclusion, besides a lot of other responsibilities in local governments? Think about local schools, education, housing, mobility. So they have a lot of responsibilities. So we really wanted to know, okay, how much time can you spend on this topic of digital inclusion? And we see that on average, people who have a mandate for digital inclusion can spend 10 hours a week on the topic. But you might notice that the median is 4 hours. So this means that we have like a huge variation. So 50% of all the people that we inventoried actually can only work for 4 hours or less a week. So that's half day a week you can work on it. And then the other 50% of the employees can work more on it. And even more, if we look a bit deeper to the results, 11% can only work half an hour on digital inclusion, while 14% of the participants told us that they can actually spend like a full-time function on it, like 38 or 40 hours a week. Something else that we notice is there is some difference in which departments take the leading or a cooperation role in this topic of digital inclusion, although we see some trends. So oftentimes the topic of digital inclusion is allocated in the Department of Culture, Leisure and the Library. Second, social services often take a high responsibility, or like a well-being department. If you then look to departments that often cooperate, so they support digital inclusion actions and the policy, but they don't have the leading role. This is the IT or the ICT department and the communication service. But again, this differs quite between all the local governments. Another important factor of how do the local governments organize themselves with this new topic is which external parties do they work with. So they are operating in their own local level, but oftentimes they seek for collaborations with other partners. And we see that almost 70% of local governments works together with other local governments. Because remember, I told you we have 300, so some of them are very small. We have then some bigger cities. So that's why they look for cooperation, to learn from each other, to invest together in certain actions. 77% also actively seeks for collaborations with local social and civic society organizations. So this can be organizations who are specialized in like people who live in poverty, also vocational education organizations that operate on the local level, and so on. And 31% also works with advisory parties. So this can be universities or university college, but also more consultancy partners at which they ask like advice on this topic, because it's really a very new topic for some of the governments to work with. So here, for example, we then also mapped like the collaborations with the local social and civil society organizations. What you see on this figure is actually the bigger the circle, and the lower it is, the more frequent they have like a collaboration with it. And we see that we have 4 organizations that were very frequently mentioned by local governments to work together with. I did not translate them because they are the Dutch names, but in fact we have the LIGO and CVO are more like vocational education organizations. SAMO is it's really often a neighboring organization that tries to connect people that sometimes are a bit more hidden or less included in society in general. So they really try to make bridges between different people. And then Avanza is often works together with libraries, and they're specialized in like cultural activities, but also seminars or lectures for everyone who wants to. And then so we could see some structure there. Then we also have other organizations that were like mentioned more medium frequent, and then some that were mentioned by some local governance, but not by all of them. So we see that this ecosystem of collaborations is very important for the local governments. Another thing with regard to organization was that we explicitly made the distinction between digital inclusion actions in practice. So the fact that you focus on that you guarantee access by making computers available for everyone in the library, or that you invest in skills training, that you make sure that people can go somewhere with their questions if they do not know how to use the digital service. And also as local governments are a public service provider themselves, that they also try to make their own services accessible, usable. So these are actions in practice. But of course, if we want the local governments to work on this topic of digital inclusion on a long term, it's also important that they think about this topic in a policy way. And that was why we, during expert interviews and also some interviews with local governments, we try to understand, okay, how do you ensure that what you do in practice is not quite random or short term, but that it is really structured and sustainable. And then we identified 3 phases that are very important, and we asked in the survey for each of these phases 6 or 5 to 7 questions at which local governments could answer like this is present or it is absent in our organizations. So for example, the vision and preparation phase, it's about having insight in what is the digital access and competences of your citizens, because this can also be very different between different local governments. And are you aware of which organizations are already doing something? So to avoid that you do like similar actions next to each other, but not collaborating on the local level. With regard to coordination and communication, there we focused really on it's important to have actions, but to also have like an overview and a central point of contact. But also think, how will you communicate and reach populations or citizens that are more vulnerable, that maybe do not come to the library? How will you ensure that they are also aware of the actions that you are creating? And then for the last policy phase, this is more about participation and evaluation based on literature and the expert interviews. We concluded that it's also important that they evaluate their current actions and that they try to adjust them. If an action is not working, that you are aware of why is this. So the governments can then like answer for themselves whether this is present or absent. And then in the report, we gave like a general percentage. So then they can also compare themselves to other local governments. How are they doing or how well are they are scoring on the policy elements? So this was all a bit about how do they now organize themselves? How do they try to reach or realize a policy on digital inclusion? But we also had 2 other questions, because local governments are not doing this on their own. They are supported by supra-local organizations. one of them is Mediawijs, who is a co-organizer here, but also we have the organization that unifies all the local governments, and they really try to support them by inspiring them with information, with a website, with webinars, also stimulating exchange between the local governments by organizing a learning network where they can exchange experiences. I think they almost have like more than 20 materials or support that the organizations provide. This is the top 5 of the most used materials, but all of the materials are very highly used by the local governments. And especially these support from Mediawijs and VVSG is also very much appreciated, in a sense that if we ask employees of local governments which learning outcomes do you get from participating in a webinar, in the learning network, going to an inspiration day, 86%, around 80% says that they really learn a lot. They become familiar with important concepts. They become more motivated to work on this topic. They acquire valuable knowledge and skills to design and implement actions in practice and in policy. The 2 lowest outcomes, but still quite high, is because this is a more advanced learning outcome. So the first is you gain knowledge, or you became motivated, while we also ask to what extent are you now better able to set up inclusion actions in your local government, or to what extent are you now more able to convince other people working at the local government of the added value of digital inclusion. But still, a majority of the participants agrees that they are that the support of Mediawijs and VVSG makes them more comfortable to do that. And then a last important question that we wanted to understand, because of the subsidies that the local governments got, they also got more responsibility in this topic. So it's not. It was not like unthinkable for us that they would have a lot of challenges because it's a new topic. So we identified 2 types of challenges. They have like the very practical challenges and then the more governance related challenges. So practical challenges are about logistical organization. Where will we organize a skill training? At what time of the day? Because you want to reach both people who are employed and unemployed, etc. Content organization is then like how it's more like the pedagogy of like skills trainings. For example, you have a very different people in your training. How can you make sure that everyone can increase their skills? So that's really, it has to do with like differentiation of how skilled people are, how skilled people already are. Also, which skills are more important? Do we have to focus on cybersecurity, or do we have to focus on very practical skills like banking apps, an app to buy a ticket for mobile transport, etc. So they have like a lot of questions about that. Then also, how do we reach target groups? I already mentioned it. Some population groups are more hidden or are sometimes overlooked. And how can we really make sure, if we do not want to leave someone behind, that we really reach everyone? That's very hard to really realize. And then a lot of the local governments work with volunteers, but also that is not always easy to make sure that these volunteers have the right skills. They need like some technical knowledge. If you wanted to advise someone to to buy a new device, you need some technical knowledge, but you also need like social skills. How do you interact with people? How do you make them comfortable? Beside the practical challenges, they had a lot of governance challenges. Suddenly, all the local governments were looking for the same profiles on the labor market. So some of them were not able to like hire the suitable or like staff with the right competences in time. Also, internal support. So I showed the slide with the different departments. Sometimes different departments question whether digital inclusion is now that important to focus on, or like the major or like the manager who questions whether this is so important or not. I also told they work a lot with each other. They look like 70% looks for collaboration, but on the other hand, a lot of them mentioned that this is a challenge because of different speeds, different ways how governments do things, different rules. Private partnerships. So sometimes it's hard to like make agreements if you collaborate with private partners. And then the last important challenge is that sometimes, not sometimes, that for almost all of them, the financial and policy capacity to ensure this on a local level is a very huge challenge. So that is why they ask, in fact, 5 things from the Flemish government. Remember, those who give them the financial support. The local governments are very happy with it, but they also ask extra support and like long-term support. And the first one that that came back a lot was, of course, structural funding. If you gave them a new responsibility, they need financial means to realize this responsibility. Also because both in Flanders as in Belgium, there were like different action plans and different subsidy flows. It was a lot for the local governments. They were overwhelmed with a lot of opportunities to get funding, but also they had to write every time a new file or application for it. They noticed that oftentimes they are doing a lot of the same things in their local bubble. So they wondered whether it's not more logical to have like a more central policy frame, and then that they can like choose some accents based on the local context. What was also what also drew our attention was that they asked regulation for themselves, that it's like obligatory for them to work on this new topic, so that for all the citizens that it's clear that every local government have to work on it, and it's not whether you live in one or another city or municipality that you can ask help with it. So that's why they ask like just make it obliged for everyone. And then a last thing they ask is that the supra-local government, so the Flemish and the federal government of Belgium, that they also really invest in their own websites and apps to make them also accessible, user-friendly, but also to think about cybersecurity, privacy, that it's really that it's not only the local governments that try to improve their public services, but if you surf to a website or an app from the supra-local governments, that is always a very easy way to go for the citizens. So based on this case in Flanders, we made like 4 conclusions. The first one is that local governments really have embraced this new responsibility as a new local authority. So they really want to work on this in the future, like other authorities they have. The subsidies within the action plan, there were a clear stimulus for local governments to develop a policy to gain more knowledge on this new topic. What is a very important element for the local governments to realize digital inclusion on the local level is this ecosystem of partners and exchange with other local governments. And then a fourth conclusion is that they need supra-local support to tackle challenges, both from the governments, but also from the civic society organizations that are already supporting them. So this was our research. If you want to know more on it, we have 2 reports, both on the comparative analysis as well as on the case in Flanders. The reports are written in Dutch, but with all those AI tools coming up, I think you can check whether you have the right skills to translate the report in your own language, or you can just talk to us, send us an email if you want to know more on the research.
Does anybody have a question for Sarah or Paola? Super clear, everybody, or everybody wants a coffee break, it's also possible. You can always, oh, there's a question.
You mentioned a lot the need for, the need for supra-local support. What about regional support? Because there was a lot of European subsidies. Was there any collaboration at the regional level, at the European level, or across between countries, let's say?
Just to clarify, you mean when you say regionally, you mean between countries, right? Yeah, so actually we expected there to be quite a few examples of collaborations when we interviewed experts from the different countries, but quite a lot of them were mainly focused on their national context. And we didn't see quite a lot of examples, at least with people we interviewed, of cross-country collaboration. However, they did explicitly express the desire to learn more from the case in Flanders, for example, because as a Belgian researcher, I would, of course, share a bit about what is happening here. And they were quite excited to participate in the research and to learn more about us. But in terms of actual collaborations across the countries, we didn't hear many examples during the interviews.
Any other questions? Sarah and Paola will still be here during the coffee break, so don't hesitate to ask them your questions when you see them. And I promise the coffee break is coming soon. I just wanted to share a bit more on how we, as a knowledge center, actually support local and regional governments. What Sarah said was actually the perfect introduction for me, so thank you for that. But so at Mediawijs, we have been supporting local governments quite actively together with VVSG, which is the organization that represents all the local governments in Flanders, and Joke is actually present. So if you have any questions for her, please don't hesitate to ask them during the coffee break. Very briefly, a few words on who we are. So as I said, Mediawijs is a knowledge center, which is a very fancy word, but what does it actually mean? What do we actually do? So our aim is actually to support all residents of Flanders and Brussels to actively, creatively, critically, and consciously use and understand digital technology and media in order to be able to participate in our society. Also, very nice, but very hard to reach objective, but that's what we aim for. How do we do this? How do we go about this? We stimulate digital and media literate behavior via campaigns and projects. To give you a very concrete example, every year we do a big campaign in elementary schools where half of all students actually participate in like a week-long competition where they have to do challenges in order to gain some media literacy skills. We also try to inspire the sector. So we try to inspire all the local organizations on how to work on these topics. We provide the opportunity to exchange good practices. We bring experts together via expert groups. We try to keep up to date ourselves with current research. And we also conduct our own research. Our biggest research project is being launched this week, actually, where we ask children and youngsters themselves on their media usage. So every 2 years, we question about 5,000 children and youngsters in Flanders, and we try to understand how they use digital media. And we try to play an active role in vision and policy development on a local level, but also on a regional and on a federal level. We work on 4 big topics. Digital inclusion is one of them, as you already understood, I'm guessing. But we also work on online opportunities and risks, on critical thinking, and on creating with media. So we actually have a big scope of topics that we work on. But back to the topic of today. To give you a bit more context, I mean, Sarah and Paola already explained a lot, so I won't go too deep into this. But in Belgium, in Flanders, we saw a big boost for the topic due to the corona pandemic. So we saw a lot more initiatives, a lot more funding, a lot more happening on the ground since about 3 years now. And for Mediawijs, it also meant that we went from a co-worker being able to work 1 day a week, more or less, on digital inclusion to a team of 5 people working on digital inclusion. So for us, as a knowledge center, it also meant a huge boost in what we were able to do. We have a few big projects on digital inclusion. The one I'm speaking to you about today, of course, is on how we support local governments, but we also have a big project where we support organizations active in health and well-being. So that means retirement homes for the elderly, but also youth homes, for example, etc. And we give long-term, so training of a year to professionals who work with specific target groups. For example, professionals who work with people with a disability, who work with newcomers, and low literate people, for example, but there's a bunch more. So how do we do this for local administrations? As Sarah explained, the main objective for those local administrations was formulating and executing, of course, a digital inclusion policy and strategy. So that's the objective they received together with funding about 3 years ago. And together with that funding, a couple of regional organizations like Mediawijs, they got the mission or the objective to support them to be able to realize this. So we set up different things. We set up training, we set up events, we set up a number of tools, of which a couple of them are translated into English. You can find them outside, so please have a look. And we also developed one very specific tool, this one, to support local administrations in actually writing a policy on digital inclusion, because we noticed and we heard that for a lot of them, especially for the little ones, where there's only one employee being able to work like half a day a week on this topic, they were really struggling with, how am I supposed to do this? What am I supposed to put into this policy? What are we supposed to do as a local administration? And so we try to give them sort of like a menu card. Like, these are things we think are important you can do on a local level. Based on your local situation, you need to prioritize and you need to choose what you will work on. Unfortunately, this one only exists in Dutch, but again, with all the AI tools, I'm sure you'll manage. I'll leave it here if you want to have a look later on. But that has really been a very important tool for those local governments in order to actually write and execute this policy on digital inclusion. But so besides that, we have worked very hard in building a network. So we have a network group of about, I'm looking at Yoka, how many people are in it by now? 700? 700 organizations and local administrations who work on digital inclusion in Flanders. So we bring them together every couple of months, digitally and or physically. We provide them with good practices, with information, and especially we provide them with the opportunity to exchange. We're struggling with it could be anything. How do you guys do it in your municipality, or how could we do this or that? So that's a very important part of our job. And as I said, well, this is the policy tool. We also provide training. So this is the third year now that we have provided the digital inclusion coach training. It's also a lot of words. But basically, it's a training of a year where we, through 7 sessions, we provide workers of local administrations with the information and the tools they need in order to develop a local digital inclusion policy. And at the end of the training, at the end of the year, they need to do an exam, and they need to write a policy paper, a good policy paper, in order to pass the exam. And we've noticed that, well, one, it's very important that they got all the necessary information, and we invite all these great speakers to talk about their expertise domain, etc. But also the possibility to be able to exchange with other colleagues from other local municipalities once a month is really, really valuable. And it's really one of the key aspects of the training. As Sarah mentioned, a lot of the local municipalities work with volunteers in order to provide digital skills training. And there are a lot of questions when working with volunteers. Should we pay them? What about privacy sensitive information with the people they're helping? What kind of training should we provide for them? Up until where can they actually provide help to people, and when does a professional need to take over, etc. So we noticed it was a very big topic and that local municipalities were really struggling in finding answers. And so we provided a whole range of tools and information sources that could help them. Part of it is a publication and a training we developed for the volunteers themselves. The other one you can see next to it is actually for the organizations or the local municipalities who work with volunteers, where we provide answers to these questions on privacy and funding and training and contracts, etc. And then the third thing we provided was basic information on essential services. I'm guessing in a lot of countries it's complicated, but in Belgium, we have a very complex state structure, which means that the services you can access, the eGov services you can access as a citizen, it's really difficult to know which one you should access when. To give you an example, in e-health services, for example. I think it was the most difficult video we made because it was really complex. There's about 9 different platforms where you can access your health information in Belgium. And not all platforms have the same information. So there's platforms managed by certain hospitals. There's a different one managed by the federal government. There's a different one managed by a group of physicians, etc., etc. And so in order to make sure that these digital volunteers, these DigiBuddies, have the basic knowledge on some of these essential services, we created step-by-step videos for them. So that's like a package that these local organizations can use to support the volunteers that that they have. And that's just to give you an idea about how we try to support these local administrations. Just a few links to our website, and there's my email as well if you should have any questions. And then I think I will let you go to the coffee break next door. Thanks.
Waar is dat dan alleen? Wel naar voren. Worden wij nu al van voor verwacht? Dat heeft onze vriend niet gezegd. Is. Ja, niet ver.
Mi lepo stoji, Madonna.
Voilà. Ah ja.
Da pobegnem.
Maar er is toch nog een trap, of niet? Ah ja. Where do you want me to sit? Oh.
Yeah, I will take this
Also
one.
make your way to the
I will
stage.
take this one,
yeah.
huh? I will take this one and take this chair. So, no, it's okay. It's okay. Only. Yeah.
I will let her first take place.
We have
You want us to sit in order?
Norman?
Welcome back, everyone.
It was cancelled.
Oh,
Welcome back. We are ready to start with the next part of our session. It's time to look at some good practices and some inspiring projects that we have invited to speak to you today. Two of them are from Belgium, one from Flanders, one from Brussels. And then we have two more European perspectives, one from Catalonia and one from Belgrade in Serbia. Please welcome our panel, Veronique Delena, Josi Franken, Liana Arroyo, and Mimir Rajcevic. Unfortunately, the moderator for the session was not able to come to Brussels today. He had issues with his plane that was cancelled. So we're sorry about that Stefano can't be here with us today, but I hope I can replace him adequately. We'll begin with the presentation from the city of Ghent. Josi Franken is the digital inclusion lead for the organization called District 09 or District 09, who is the IT partner for the city of Ghent, and they are supporting the citizens of the city to cope in the digital world. Josi, over to you.
Yeah, thank you for your introduction. I'll just press on play. So good morning, everyone. My name is Josi Franke, and I'm proud to represent District 09, the digital partner of the city of Ghent. In our team, I serve as a project leader on digital inclusion. Our mission is simple yet profound. We want every citizen to be included in the digital world. And over the next couple of minutes, I'll present how we are trying to tackle this goal in our city. But before delving into our operations, let's first very quickly situate ourselves geographically. So Ghent is the capital city of the East Flanders province, located in the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium. We have a population of approximately 270,000 citizens who live across 25 different neighborhoods. Here you can see a picture that's taken in the heart of our city that beautifully captures both the essence and the contrast of our city. So on the right side, you see the white tower of the iconic St. Bavus Cathedral, while on the left side, you see the strikingly modern architecture of our main library that's called the Krook. And this building does not only houses our library, but also our main DigiPoint. And that's a place where a citizen can walk in free and get digital assistance. Besides that, the building also houses a Makers Lab and the offices of IMEC, the Flemish R&D hub on digital innovation. Thus, we aim to be a tech startup city, but one where we can ensure that all citizens are included in the digital world. So now that we have like a glimpse of our identity, let's now explore how we are tackling inclusion in our city. So our team at District 09 works closely together with various city departments where the dedicated colleagues are working on inclusion projects. And together with all these city departments, we have crafted a shared vision on e-inclusion, which you can read on the screens behind me, saying that in the city of Ghent, we focus on digital inclusion to prevent the digital transformation leading to exclusion. And we do that by making our digital services user-friendly, by ensuring that citizens and employees can keep up digitally, and finally, by boosting and coordinating digital inclusion. This vision revolves around three main challenges that we face when working on e-inclusion. And in response to these challenges, we formulated 7 positive solutions which I'll walk you through in the next couple of slides. Our first challenge is how do we make our digital services user-friendly? Because if we want to maximize citizens' use of our digital services, we have to ensure that they are intuitive and easy to comprehend so that also people with basic digital skills know how to navigate them. And we try to do that by focusing on or like exploring and practicing insights from human-centered design, and we try to prioritize the user when we are designing digital applications. And one way of doing that is by organizing user testing. Here you can see a picture of 2 of my colleagues who are asking a random library peasant. This picture is also taken in the Kroog, the building that I showed earlier, to share his experience on a certain service. And that way they try to tackle questions such as what does the user actually need? What doesn't he need? How should we organize and structure our service? And is it accessible to everyone? The more user-friendly an application or a digital service is designed, the more people will be able to use it. However, there will always be people who, for various reasons, cannot use it or don't dare to use it or simply don't want to try to use it. So for them, additional help will always be necessary. And that's why in Ghent we advocate for the implementation of a multi-channel strategy, also known as a click, call, connect principle, meaning that for every digital service, there's a non-digital alternative available, and that when people encounter a question or they are in need of help, they can find it. And seamlessly brings me to our next challenge, and that is like, how do we get that help to our people? Like, how do we ensure that our citizens, our employees can keep up digitally and they can find help when needed? A first way of doing that is by really focusing on the individual support for our citizens and employees. In Ghent, there exists a wide range, like a wide variety of all types of individual support. The most well-known type I already mentioned, that's called our DigiPoints. So all over the 25 different neighborhoods, you can find 36 of these free places where you can walk in and get digital assistance, whether by a volunteer or a professional walker. Secondly, we provide learning opportunities for basic digital competencies. And lastly, we really focus on bringing the digital support directly to vulnerable audiences, because people who live in a challenging situation due to financial or physiosocial challenges or problems, they often struggle to find access to our regular range of individual support. So therefore, integration into existing activities and collaboration with neighborhood organizations, social organizations that have already a trusted relationship with those citizens, those vulnerable citizens, yeah, that's crucial. In this slide, I go into a little more detail about this individual help. So in 2023, we answered around 17,000 or 16,575 digital questions, a breakdown of which you can see on the screen behind me. This is a powerful figure, but be careful because it does not paint the whole picture. As you can see, of these 16,000 questions, only 1,235 are answered by professional DigiCoaches working with vulnerable groups. Sorry, and that's, as I mentioned before, because the questions or like the digital queries that these people encounter, they are often much more complex. They are interconnected with other domains such as employment or such as housing. So to help them, the expertise and the time of social workers is really indispensable. And our third challenge, already our last challenge, is like how do we boost and how do we coordinate all the initiatives that I talked about, and how do we ensure that they can still exist in the future? As I tried to point out during this small presentation, there are already a lot of city services and city organizations that are aware of the importance of digital inclusion in Ghent. But to ensure that we are all moving the same direction and we are all working towards the same goal, we find that we need that it's handy to appoint a central driving force, a central entity that can foster collaboration, that can establish networking, and that can continuously raise awareness on digital inclusion. And in Ghent, that role has been taken up by District 09 since 2006. And as a last solution, we also advocate to combine both transferal and domain-specific coordination. That's a fancy or complicated way to say that we bring together stakeholders within specific fields, while at the same time we connect all the different fields on the local level, while also making the bridge between the local and the supra-local level. And that already brings me towards the end of my presentation. I'll now pass it to you, Veronique, I guess, or
yes,
to...
Please pass it on to Veronique.
Okay.
Veronique was next.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Josi. A round of applause, please.
Thank you.
Right. From the local authority in the form of the organization working with the city itself, we are going to the NGO level and organizations that are working more directly with the people in the form of CABAN, which is the collective of the Brussels-based actors on digital accessibility. They are represented here today by Veronique, who is a member of the board of All Digital with the organization MAX, where she is director. Over to you, Veronique.
Okay. So he already said it. Most of you know me as director of Max VZW, and Max VZW owns 2 digital competence centers in the poorest neighborhoods in Brussels, Kuregem and Molenbeek. Or other people know me as one of the board members of All Digital. But what most of the people don't know is that I'm also vice president of CABAN, DBAC in Flemish. And CABAN is a collective of digital competence center in Brussels capital region. We have 28 recognized by ministry recognized digital competence centers in the Brussels capital region. So let's take a little bit of history. In 1999, Max created the first proximity center in ICT. It was a private initiative, foundation, and many of the local governments and local initiative in Flanders came to visit us to see how we did this. The people of Ghent came to ask us a lot of questions. The people of DigiDAC of Turnhout came to ask us how to set up their center. So we give a lot of information in this period to help other people to start up this digital competence centers. In 2008, 4 Brussels actors create Kaban to represent the sector, because we already knew that during 7 years we were all struggling to have grants, to have possibility to grow. The demand of the people was very big, but we didn't have the possibility, neither the finance, to defend this Brussels activity. We also create a website for the public in need, not for the public in need directly, because they don't have the possibility to use internet or computers, but mostly for social actors to help them find their way to courses and to the digital competence centers. We were also participating at what we call Semaine Numérique, a kind of a version of the All Digital Weeks. We were making also a news website, and in 2018, we create Kaban Dibac as a foundation. So what is the mission of Kaban? We want to create a network of digital actors. Something is falling down, but I think it's also working. We had also a political representation. This was very important for us, because we wanted to convince Brussels government, Brussels local governments, to invest in digital inclusion. And like you know, before COVID, it was a very difficult thing to convince the people. We wanted to share good practices and train the trainers, because all of us were working with people from the target group. So we choose to working with unemployed people and train them in our centers. But at the same time, because those people were mostly people who didn't finish secondary school, we had to train them and invest a lot in training. But the advantage was, because they are people of the target groups, so they can reach easily the targets. The target group is because they invite their neighbors or their family to come. So when I heard that local governments have difficulties to reach the target groups, this is a solution. And at the same time, you can give a job to unemployed people and learn them how to become digital coaches. And then we organize also the communication to the field of saying that everyone that sees someone in vulnerable groups with problems of digital inclusion can send them to the competence center. And what is very important, we are creating what we call public digital spaces. In French is espace public numérique, in Dutch is openbare computerruimte. And what is for us very important is the multimedia animator is the heart of the EPN. We don't think that it's good to have only computers. There was a long time our governments said, oh, if we put 5 computers, if we put a printer, everything, people will come and will. This doesn't work. The people are afraid of this tool, and they have to have someone who is very close to them to help him work on this computer, and who can prove in reality, if I could learn it, you can also learn it. And you don't have to underestimate this important thing. So we insist that the human presence in this in this computer space has to be very important. What is evident, and that everyone was convinced of it, we need free access to computer, tablets, printer, no thresholds for entrance, and our public digital spaces have a minimum of 15 opening hours a week. Trying to do this when at a time that people can come. For example, we have a public digital space near to a school. We know the mothers are going to bring the children to the school because mostly they don't work. It's interesting to open the digital space from 9 to 10 because after they have to go and make the food. So you have to think what are the opening hours that is interesting for your target groups. So what is the values of the EPN is, first of all, we want to make people so independent as possible. So we want to make them autonomous. So they, in the beginning, they need help, but we will insist that they get the courses to learn it everything by themselves. It's not interesting to do click, 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 and see that people, the problem is solved, but they don't have really the solution for that thing. So it's also interesting that it's non-lucrative, it's non-profit. Sustainability is very important. We work a lot, and that's also our the thing we defend to the people. You don't need to buy new smartphone or laptops. It's very easy to reuse things, and it's less expensive to work with refurbished things. It's better for the environment also. It's also our digital spaces are also a meeting place. People from all nationalities, all seniors with youngsters, everyone can meet each other and learn from each other, and everyone is welcome. So what is the acquisition of Kaban? We present our government as a registry of cost and income. So we said that if for 15 hours of opening, we need 30,000 euros to pay someone and have some working cost. And it's interesting for us to have a digital space for every 10,000 inhabitants of the Brussels capital region, also with a focus on the poorest neighborhoods. We realize a communication website. We have also a toolkit how to create a public computer space. It's interesting to see and to compare it with the one of Mediawijs, I think. We also had last year 96 hours of training for public administration workers, how to recognize people in digital gap. And we have also now a very big political action because our Ministry of Capital, Brussels Capital Region, responsible for digital inclusion, wanted to turn on our administration only digital. So we want human presence at the local government is for us is very important because we know that we have more than 480,000 inhabitants of Brussels with no sufficient digital skills, and we have 75% in poor neighborhoods. There is no structural aid for the public computer spaces. We have to work on my organization, Max, already 25 years is working on project base. So we are working with 80 persons in our center, but only on project base. And when we see an image of the visitors of the public spaces, we see that 51% of them are women, 10% youngsters. They in the beginning, we had a lot of youngsters, but now the youngsters mostly have their own computers or smartphones and stay at home or with the friends. They don't come to the digital spaces, they come to maker spaces. 32 of them are unemployed and 22 of them are seniors. In the unemployed people, we have 54% of the people, they don't have the digital competences to find a job. So they know the job, but don't have the digital competences to search for annonces or to send a CV for email. So if in the seniors, we have 12% never touched a computer and 36 who has no sufficient skills. So what we demand is a structural recognition of the public spaces and public space for 10,000 inhabitants. Then the lessons learning, I already told you, peer learning is essential in our case. People who have not a big education, how more digital education you have, or how difficult it is to learn people without digital skills to help. It's better to have good pedagogues who have people experienced with difficulties in learning and to teach them how to train people digitally than have informaticians that you will learn how to become a good pedagogue. We also create a new job, and this is the job of public digital writer. I don't know if you remember, but a long time ago, we had public writers, people who could write the letters for the people who couldn't write and read. Now we introduce the public digital writer, and this is a person who can show you how to solve problems with digital access to governmental sites. You need housing. What do you need to do to get this house? How can you buy a house and ask for a loan? But how can you rent a house and find these possibilities? You need to go into your e-health service. You can go to this public digital writer and he can explain you. And those people are also trained a lot in deontology. Like we told that we work a lot with people of the target groups. So we train some of them also to become public digital writer. But those people are trained a lot in deontology because they has to use identity card of the people, and it's very important that they know and they have the permission of the people how to treat it. At the same time, they make people more and more autonomous, but we know that also people with punctual questions about housing, about tax, about they need the help of this public digital writer.
Veronique, I'm very sorry to press you for.
Yeah, it's my last thing. So it's very important that people learn to work on digital products. We see that you give people a lesson and the week after they forget. When they make a digital project like a digital story, they learn the same as a lesson, but they remember it. So working on digital well-being is very important. Before we could say we give you a course, and then we talk you about the risk. Now we have to do it all the same. We have also to explain what is the win-win situation learning digital equation to the customer. And of course, I already told we train the trainers. And so I'm finishing with this one. And I ask, are every government, every people here in the to ask to make the same kind of studies? In the Good Things Foundation in UK said that when you invest £1 in digital inclusion, you win £10. So I think it could be interesting to do it everywhere and to prove that investing in digital inclusion for governments is a win situation. So questions, my information is there. So thank you, Norman.
Thank you very much, Veronique.
Patience.
Absolutely welcome. It is a very big topic, and we can talk about each of these presentations here today much longer than we have time for, I'm afraid. But let's move on to now out of Belgium and to get a bit of a European perspective and with some experiences there. Next up is Liliana, who is the Director General for Digital Society with the Catalan government, but she's not just representing the regional perspective of a regional authority. She is talking today about a network of Catalan organizations, the Catalan Digital Alliance, who are all organizations or digital members, we are proud to say. And over to you.
Thank you, Norman, and thank you to All Digital for having us. We were so excited when you opened the call for papers in this case, and we thought this was a good opportunity. So I would say that we can take this presentation first as an experiment, because we are starting to walk as an alliance or a sort of alliance within the All Digital umbrella. This is an experiment. And the second thing is take my presentation as a teaser, because as Norman said, I will mention several projects of the different entities that are part of it. You can see the logos below, but fortunately what we have later on the opportunity to discuss in small groups, and the people responsible for many of these projects I will be mentioning are over here, so I will be pointing them just for you to recognize them in case you have some questions and you want to discuss with us any further detail. That being said, let me say that I forgot to put a map from Catalonia, but maybe you know where Barcelona is. So Barcelona is the capital of the Catalan region. We are about 8 million already. I think we reached 8 million like a couple of months ago. And we also have these proximity points, as Veronique was saying. We have around 400 in Catalonia, and they are a combination of digital bodies and digital inclusion coaches, taking the language that was previously explained as well. And I'm saying this because in these 400 points of proximity, digital proximity points, you can either go to get help for get your subsidy, as Veronique was saying, or you can also go there to use a 3D printer. So there's a wide range of options that you can go there. But let's move on. And the first thing, maybe some of you are asking yourselves, why an alliance? Why, if you are just members of All Digital, why are you setting up this alliance? the first one, it's obvious, it's collaboration. It's a matter of inside-out integration. As you will see, most of the projects I will mention are already covering alliances between like bilateral collaborations, but we want to make this bigger and to coordinate projects, initiatives, and also align visions, and also from the administration perspective, it's important to also have a map on what's going on in the region, and also try to provide support to those interesting initiatives. We share an approach to capacitation and capacity building, which is wide. What we envision when we think about enhancing capacity building, we prefer to take a holistic approach to digital skills. So we are not only talking about vulnerable people, that of course we are, and we have some projects in this sense, but we're also speaking about talents. So we're covering like a big arc of situations. And last but not the least, we are also focusing on innovation. So our aspiration is that vulnerable people, I mean, maybe in the sense of the Good Foundation, the Good Things Foundation. So we're trying to promote the digital capacities of those that today are vulnerable, for them to be the talent of tomorrow. So they can upgrade their situation. So we are also fostering and dynamizing the innovation ecosystem there, because we also think that digital innovation needs to be hand in hand with digital inclusion. Otherwise, what we have is new divides, new breaches, and all these things that you already know. So let's go into it. I will mention some projects and initiatives. Apologies beforehand, because I will be quick, and apologies to my colleagues, because probably I'm not being so exhaustive in the explanation, but of course we have the small groups afterwards. So we are presenting here six initiatives. So the first one, it's a sort of an umbrella that we like to put first, because helps us to set the context that I was already sharing. And this is encoded, I would say, under the Catalan Charter for Digital Rights and Responsibilities in terms of the idea of citizens. This was produced as a social innovation process starting in 2019. So remember that the EU Charter of Digital Rights, it was signed by the end of 2022. December, I think. So we started this as a co-creation process already with many experts. By many, I refer to 2,050 experts, activists, local authorities, and so on, but also academics. So it was a diverse group that was co-creating this charter. And we also included the boys. So the last step we have been doing in this is social innovation process, and there are more coming, but the last one, and this was presented last March, it was to co-create a manifesto for digital rights and responsibilities with children and adolescents. And this was a co-creation process, as I said, based on focus group, and it's like the third iteration of a project, including children and adolescent voices in the global conversation of digital rights. And I'm sure you have good eyes, but maybe you cannot read all the visual thinking. We can share it afterwards. But let me just drive you through the three main conclusions. One is, we want safer spaces on the internet. So we want to be capacitated, and we want to have the knowledge and the capacity to discriminate which are good contents and which are not. But we want online safe spaces to be raised, to explore, to experiment with our identities, and so on. So please offer us that. The second is, please offer us alternatives before forbidding us or banning mobile phones or certain online spaces. So provide us with alternatives, be imaginative, help us to find creative ways to be online that are safe and that are positive and constructive. And the third one is, we want to be heard. So if we could provide an advice after all this process, it's not only that their voice matters, but it's also that they want to be heard, and they have many, many things to say. So if there's someone in the room interested in how the process was, we can help you with this, or at least offer our experience. And from the administration point of view, we are not only working in terms of digital rights, including kids or including other collectivities. We are also trying to generate spaces for global debates about technology and technology or innovation, the governance of innovation. And this is something also new, another alliance. Okay, this one is international. It's called DITA, and it stands for Disruptive and Emerging Technologies. And the technologies that we have in mind are AI, cybersecurity, quantum computing, and new space. But also there's a working group. I mean, for each technology, we have a working group, or we are offering to create spaces for a working group for each technology, but also an overarching group of digital rights and regulation, where all digital inclusion needs to be, of course, here. And we have here Albert, which is the coordinator of this DITA Alliance. So you can discuss with him or offer your interest for being part of it, particularly if you are a local administration or a government or a region or part of the ecosystem, because we're open to many different actors. Okay, with several purposes. One of them is to exchange knowledge among all these entities I was saying. Also adapting public policies to the new context. We know that we are not ready yet to have new public policies or new decision-making processes that are aligned with the speed of innovation in terms of technology, and of course influencing the global conversation about the governance of technology and innovation, as I was saying before. Let's move on, and now we're talking about digital equity, and they are not here, but they were supposed to be here. Is Fundació Bofill, which is another entity which is also member of All Digital, and it's interesting because they have created a sort of lab about digital equity, where they offer spaces of discussion, but also practices to promote this digital equity, and their focus is on digital well-being, which is also an interesting way to approach all the aspects related to digital inclusion. And together with Collectic, so Fundació Bofill and Collectic, which is another member of the All Digital Association, they are carrying out a project which is named Code Club. And this 5% is because they found that 5% of the after-school activities that are offered in public or private spaces for children are about technology. Critical thinking or computational thinking, robotics, educative robotics, and so on and so forth. But normally, the sort of families that go to these after-work activities tend to be are households that are around having higher education. Okay, so all those kids that are raised in vulnerable situations, they normally don't have access to that. So this Code Club project is something that it's created to solve particularly this through libraries, for instance, public libraries, and they are offering spaces for learning how to code, but under a methodology which is based on teamwork and also based on curiosity. There's not a fixed curriculum, let's say, but they can create, they can write code for their own purposes. We now jump to, Collectic and Fundació Bofill, they are not here, but we can connect you with them. Now we move to the Mobile World Capital Foundation. They are over here. We have Marjorie here in front. We have agreed to mention a couple of initiatives that are included in the talent arena. Many of you have heard about the Mobile World Congress, I'm sure. Okay, so within the stand of the Mobile World Capital Foundation, in Talent Arena, they offer different activities targeting different sectors of population. One is for professionals, and the other one is for IT students, for international IT students. This one, the Itinerary Day Conference, promotes the retention and incorporation of international students from the IT sector in the digital ecosystem of Barcelona. You know, the reality of Barcelona is we are attracting a lot of international talent, but it's difficult to retain them, right? So this is a sort of networking lunch to encourage connections between international students, participating companies at the conference, so they have reasons to stay, or they find new reasons to stay in Barcelona. And the Talent Arena, as I was saying, this is within the stand of the Mobile World Capital, within the Mobile World Congress. Tries to be the epicenter for digital talent. You see a lot of space, 150 square meters dedicated to the Talent Arena, many speakers during 4 days, many sessions, participants all around, and the topics are very, very wide: machine learning, software engineering, data science, cybersecurity, microchips, telecommunications, and artificial intelligence. You can see that this is like the talent perspective that we're bringing on the table. I'm sure Marjorie will be happy to explain you more about this. Maybe you can participate, or maybe I think it would be fantastic if we could connect these proximity digital points and digital bodies to be able to be participating here as well. And last but not the least, we also have the AutoCAD Foundation here. Marta is sitting over there with Strace, and with them we are promoting like what we call the social and digital innovation strategy in terms of territory. So we are trying to move it beyond Barcelona and to arrive to every single corner of the country. And again, we have many things going on under this Catalan strategy of social and digital innovation. But let me put on the table like 3 things. One is the principles of this strategy, and then I will mention a couple of initiatives that we have up and running at the moment. So the first thing is that all the strategy is aligned with the human-centered society that from Europe they are also trying to promote. We also bring on the table the ethical, participatory, and transparent governance perspective. So again, putting people at the center. It's also about having UX experience when you design, as you were mentioning, but it's also to think about how are you dealing with data, right? And also transparency in terms of governance. And of course, citizens must be able to participate in all these processes, particularly all that is related to democracy, and have their control on their own data and so on. Also, we like to promote the use of public digital infrastructures, also connected with the human-centered digital society, but also with digital sovereignty, which is another European perspective, perspective with European flavor again, and of course reducing the digital divide. But we are not putting the divide at the center, but we would like to create a strategy that promotes equity and inclusion, regardless where are you born and what is your situation at birth. That being said, we have a couple of projects. One is Colaboratori Catalunya, which is basically a formula of collaboration between the administration, universities or knowledge centers, companies or private sector, and civil society at large, and organized civic society. That basically we are mapping stakeholders and challenges around the territory and offering or facilitating spaces for them to collaborate and find their own ways to progress. And another one, Áreas Digital, it's connected to digital advanced technologies, the ones that I was mentioning before: new space, AI, cybersecurity, and so on, and also 5G connectivity. So what we are opening is a series of labs around Catalonia. We have 8 at the moment, and we are inviting local agents, local companies, local administrations, so on, to pilot certain proofs of concept. For instance, we had one about smart metering in terms of water consumption and the social impact of this. Maybe it's not evident, but one of the things that one of the participants were explaining is she was an elder woman living alone, and she was saying that she was feeling better and she was feeling more secure because according to the patterns of water use at home, the local government could notice if she was okay, like following the usual patterns of something was happening, like if she's away or maybe she is ill or whatever. So imagine how all these initiatives can tackle not only digital inclusion and capacity building, but also social cohesion, which at the end of the day, it's also something that we need to work for. So that's all. You see, this is an experiment, as I said, many projects that I've been mentioning, but many others that we don't have time to talk about. But this experimental alliance that we are trying to present today and to foster, it's about learning together, it's about sharing, it's about scaling and replicating, not only in Catalonia. So feel free to approach us if you want to replicate something in your countries, or if you want to test your projects in a different context. And we also invite you to join our playground. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juliana. And now for our fourth inspiring presentation, we are turning our eye not just in European context or in European Union context. We're looking beyond the European Union, where we have also great initiatives going on. And one representative is here today with Miomir, who is representing the Media Education Center in Belgrade, Serbia. And over to you, Miomir.
Thank you very much for introduction and to invite me to make this short panel presentation. And after that, will be my pleasure to communicate with all interested people, because time is short to give you everything what we have in our plan to do. This is Digital Laboratory of Media Education Center, one of 6 laboratories we have. And this is a description of what we are doing in our digital laboratory. I will tell you that with other 5 laboratories, we collaborate first with the media laboratory and the social laboratory. And between, we are working with the peace laboratory, health laboratory, and economic laboratory. This is the name of my presentation. I try to shortly present what we have in our strategy to develop in Serbia and if will be possible in Western Balkans. And I will start with one quote. And this quote highlights the critical need for education and empowerment to ensure that the rights and opportunities are not only available, but also accessible and usable. It implies that simply providing access to rights is insufficient without equipping individuals with necessary understanding and tools to effectively utilize them. And it is something like precognition to the last slide of my colleague from Catalonia and Barcelona. I start with these game rules we have to respect. So I will start with the main problem in digital education. It is prejudice. It is some misconceptions in public sector and educational sector. And I will give just a few elements that we are fighting against to explain to people that this include belief that such strategies are preliminary beneficial only to younger or urban population, ignoring their potential to enhance digital access and literacy across various demographic like seniors and rural communities. Critics often argue that the cost of those strategies do not justify the benefits, focusing too heavily on initial expenses without considering long-term socio-economical gains. There are also tendency to concentrate exclusively on infrastructure, like broadband access, overlooking essential aspects such as user capability and content relevance, which are vital and real digital empowerment. Later, some hold the view that with this rise of mobile technologies and market solution, region-specific digital strategy are redundant, not acknowledging the persistence gaps in accessibility and digital literacy. Others expect immediate results once access is provided, not recognizing that need for continuous support and education to truly bridge the digital divide. Privacy concerns and fears of cultural overreach and generate skepticism with worries that those initiatives may compromise data security and dilute local cultures and language. What is our focus? What is against prejudice we are fighting in our country, and what we try to bridge during development of digital laboratory and digital knowledge in our society? It's effective regional or local digital inclusion strategy and fundamental aim in promoting digital equity and enhancing digital education. This strategic approach are designed to create a more equitable digital landscape where every individual has fair access to digital technologies and the internet. Central of those strategies could be or must be a robust foundation that combine diverse methodologies, well-crafted policies, and strong collaborative efforts. The cornerstone of these strategies involves ensuring universal access to digital resources. This means that digital device, high-speed internet, and digital literacy programs are made and must be accessible to all segments of the community, regardless of socio-economic status, geographic location, age, or ability. The universal access of our strategies aim to bridge the digital divide that often separates affluent communities from underprivileged ones. Moreover, our strategies emphasize to the importance of educational program, especially target at improving digital skills and literacy. The objective here is not just to provide the tools, but also the necessary knowledge and skills to use those tools efficiently. The educational component is crucial for empowering individuals to navigate, consume, and produce digital content responsible and proficiently, to be actively participate in the digital world. Successful implementation of this strategy for this collaboration is key. This involves partnership between various stakeholders, including governmental bodies, private sector entities, educational institutions, and non-profit organizations. Together, those groups to tailor solutions that are reflective and responsive to the distinct needs of their communities. Ultimately, this digital inclusion strategy are not just about providing access, but ensuring that such access is meaningful and contributes to overall societal progress by fostering digital competencies and inclusivity. This, in turn, supports a broad range of socio-economic benefits from enhanced educational outcomes, and employment opportunities to generate civic engagement and improves access to essential services. Another end, one other quote. This quote describes how crucial digital literacy is in our increasingly interconnected world. Without the skills required to navigate digital platforms and technology, individuals may find themselves disconnected from numerous opportunities and essential services in today's digital landscape. And this is the introduction, and this is 9 elements we are working to implement digital literacy in our country. Of course, I will not talk now about these 9 elements. Maybe if somebody come after this to our working in small groups, we can talk about this. This is my contact, and anybody who is interested, please use it to send me email or message, and it will be my pleasure to collaborate with all of you. Thank you very much for invitation and to give me opportunity what we try to do in Serbia.
Thank you very much. And a big thank you to all the panel and all your various perspectives that were very different in parts and also highlighted the different challenges that you're trying to tackle and that you face. And I saw also in the room a lot of recognition and nodding when you spoke, what people also recognize from their own work and their challenges. So thank you very much. We are now moving on to the next part of our session, which is also going to be the final part of this first event today. And this is the work in small groups, rather than having now just some few questions from the audience, 1 or 2 that won't cover anything at all. We are splitting up the room in small groups. We have to see how we fit in depending on how it works out, where you can speak in small groups to each of the presenters today, not just the 4 here, but also the presenters from earlier today, Alenka and Sarah and Paula. That you can come together and we'll do 2 sessions of 20 minutes each. So you can pick and choose 2 of them. I know I would also like to go to all 5 of them. It's unfortunately not possible. But we also have the networking lunch afterwards where you then can get in touch and ask your questions and discuss further points or the points that you found interesting would like to add on. So what we're now going to do, thank you to the panel. I think you're going to get your mics removed, and then we're going to find the groups, and you can walk around the room and also find the parts that are most interesting. We're looking for group sizes of 8 to 10 people. If you try to split yourselves up in that way. And then, yeah, we have the first round of group discussion, which I'll announce when it begins, once we have set it up a bit, in about 5 minutes. And I will also then tell you after 20 minutes to swap around and change. Thank you very much.